Thorpe Park has seen countless changes over the years. From spinning flats and dark rides, to lost roller coasters and iconic water attractions, entire chapters of the park's past have quietly disappeared. Some were beloved classics, others were short-lived experiments, but each played a role in shaping the park we know today. Revisit 10 vanished attractions from across Thorpe Park's history, from forgotten flumes and reimagined coasters, to early exhibitions and retired thrill rides. These are the experiences that once defined the park, and the legacy they left behind. In its earliest years, Thorpe Park was not the thrill-seeking destination we know today. When it first opened in 1979, the park positioned itself as a leisure and educational space, built on the remains of a former quarry and centred around exploration, learning and British heritage. While these early attractions weren't rides in the traditional sense, they were immersive large-scale experiences, and they played a significant role in shaping the park's original vision. One of the most distinctive features of the early park was its impressive collection of replica historical aircraft. These were showcased in 3 major exhibitions across the site. The Royal Naval Air Service exhibition focused on aircraft from the First World War, featuring detailed replicas such as the Sopwith Camel and the Fokker DR-1. The Fleet Air Arm exhibit, located near today's Vortex and Zodiac, displayed aircraft from the Second World War and beyond, highlighting the aviation history of the Royal Navy. And on a section of land that jutted into Abbey Lake, the Schneider Trophy exhibit featured seaplanes from the early 20th century. Some of these aircraft were airworthy and took part in flying displays. Others were static installations, allowing guests to study the craftsmanship up close. Beyond aviation, the park featured an expansive walkthrough attraction known as Invaders of Britain, also referred to as Our Heritage or History of Man. This exhibit recreated scenes from key periods in British history, with life-size buildings, structures and even boats. Visitors could walk from a Stone Age cave to a Saxon long haul, pass through a Roman fort and end at King John's Pavilion, complete with a banquet scene. Replica boats included a full-size Roman galley and a 32-oared Viking longship. Another early feature was Model World, a tranquil garden area showcasing detailed 1/36 scale models of famous world landmarks. From the Eiffel Tower to the CN Tower, the Sydney Opera House to the Statue of Liberty, the display offered an educational and visual journey through global architecture. This area, once central to the park's layout, was gradually reduced in size and eventually cleared to make way for stealth. By the early 2000s, these heritage-focused exhibits had largely disappeared. Aircraft were sold off, historical structures removed, and the focus shifted toward thrill rides and themed experiences. But these early attractions remain a key part of Thorpe Park's story, reminders of a time when education and history were just as central to the park's identity as excitement and speed. In 1982, Thorpe Park introduced the Magic Mill. A slow-moving boat ride through landscape gardens with a whimsical indoor scene, it was designed as a gentle escape for families and younger guests. Boats with 3 rows of bench seating glided along a narrow water channel, passing flower beds, miniature houses and garden gnomes, all set to a peaceful classical soundtrack. Eventually guests would enter the mill itself, a dark ride portion where animatronic animals perform Paul McCartney's We All Stand Together. The interior featured playful scenes with frogs, hippos and other creatures in a fairy tale grotto. While modest in scale and technology, Magic Mill's charm came from its simplicity, acting as a peaceful interlude among the park's growing slate of attractions. As Thorpe Park shifted toward more themed areas in the 1990s, Magic Mill was reimagined as part of the new Ranger County area. In 1995, the ride was revamped into Mr. Rabbit's Tropical Travels. The retheming brought subtle but noticeable changes. The boats were redesigned to resemble safari vessels, and large fiberglass models of the Thorpe Park Rangers were placed around the garden route. Oversized storybooks were added to tell the origin story of Mr. Rabbit and how he assembled the Ranger team on a journey through the jungle. Animal calls and tribal drums replaced the original classical music, giving the outdoor section a more tropical feel. Inside the mill, the scenes still featured fantastical woodland scenes, with some slight tropical updates. Sadly, the ride's life was cut short by a devastating fire on July 21, 2000. The blaze destroyed the indoor portions of both Mr. Rabbit's tropical travels and the nearby Wicked Witch's haunt. While the outdoor garden section of Mr. Rabbit's ride reopened afterwards, the mill itself was gone. The attraction closed for good at the end of the 2001 season. Its former site was eventually cleared to make room for Nemesis Inferno, the park's B&M inverted coaster, which opened in 2003. Today, no trace of the mill or its tranquil river remain. In 1983, as Thorpe Park began transforming into a fully fledged theme park, it introduced one of its most ambitious early dark rides, Fantasia. The ride offered a uniquely British take on the classic ghost train. Built on a Mack Ride's continuous transit system, similar to Disney's Omnimover, the attraction used 360-degree rotating clamshell ride vehicles and spanned 2 floors inside a large show building. Guests entered through a dimly lit medieval facade and stepped onto a rotating loading platform beneath a chandelier made of skeleton parts. Once on board, riders were taken through a sequence of eerie but often tongue-in-cheek scenes based on Britain's darker history and folklore. Among the highlights were Henry VIII at a haunted banquet table, surrounded by ghostly apparitions of his wives, Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett preparing their infamous pies, and Mary Queen of Scots holding her severed head. There was even a séance room with a levitating table and a ballroom of skeletons waltzing to pipe organ music. While atmospheric sound effects and dim lighting added a spooky edge, much of the ride leaned into gallows humour rather than outright horror. By the early 1990s, however, dark ride technology and public expectations had moved on. In 1994, Thorpe Park reimagined the attraction as Wicked Witch's Haunt, giving it a full visual and audio overhaul. The original scenes were repainted with glowing UV colours, and new effects and animatronics were added throughout. The ride's entrance was relocated, now featuring a large animatronic witch that cackled at passerbys from above the doorway, scaring some younger visitors even before they made it inside. New scenes were introduced to heighten the theme, including witches brewing a potion, massive hairy tarantulas, and a finale featuring the head witch locked behind bars, rattling the cell door as riders passed. Though the makeover added new life to the attraction, ridership began to decline by the end of the decade. Then, on July 21, 2000, a devastating fire tore through the building, completely destroying Wicked Witch's Haunt along with the nearby Mr. Rabbit's tropical travels. While Mr. Rabbit reopened in modified form, the remains of Wicked Witch's Haunt were deemed beyond repair. The ruins were demolished, and the spot would eventually become home to Detonator, a drop tower that stands where Fantasia and Wicked Witch's Haunt once spooked guests. Opening in 1993, Calgary Stampede was one of Thorpe Park's earliest attempts to introduce more intense thrills into its lineup. Located in the Canada Creek area, near Loggers Leap, the ride was a departure from the rustic theming that defined the area. With little in the way of decoration, the brightly coloured fairground-style attraction looked out of place among the wooden sawmill aesthetic of Canada Creek. But what it lacked in theming, it made up for in thrills. Manufactured by Fairmat, Calgary Stampede was a tri-star type attraction, a staple of travelling fun fairs across Europe. Its layout featured 21 two-passenger ride cars, arranged in groups of 7 around 3 massive arms. Each group had its own distinctive metallic colour, gold, pink or green, and each car was fitted with a basic T-bar restraint. During the ride cycle, each set of cars spun anti-clockwise, while the 3 support arms themselves rotated in a clockwise direction. As the arms lifted and lowered, guests were tilted up to 34 degrees, creating a chaotic spinning experience that reached speeds of up to 30 revolutions per minute. As the ride built up momentum, it wasn't uncommon for guests to feel like they were about to be flung into the surrounding barriers. The tight layout and low sight lines added to the experience, especially for first-time riders. Lights flickered across the ride structure, from multicoloured bulbs on the arms to glowing panels on the car's underside, creating a dizzying blur of motion and colours after dark. In an era before Colossus, Nemesis Inferno or Stealth, Calgary Stampede stood out as one of Thorpe Park's few high-intensity attractions. It played a key role in bridging the gap between the park's family roots and the thrill-heavy direction it would later take. After a decade of operation, Calgary Stampede was retired at the end of the 2003 season. It was replaced the following year by Samurai, a top-scan ride relocated from Chessington World of Adventures, which still occupies the space today. Though long gone, Calgary Stampede remains a fond memory for many guests, an early taste of the thrills that would come to define the modern Thorpe Park. When Canada Creek Railway opened in 1989, it was more than just a ride, it was genuine transport. Built by Seven Lamb, the miniature railway provided a scenic link between the rustic Canada Creek area and Thorpe Farm, a family-friendly attraction located on the far edge of the park. With the farm only accessible by footpath, ferryboat or train, the railway quickly became a vital part of the Thorpe Park experience. Trains would depart from Canada Creek Station and make their way through woodlands and over gentle terrain, with a trip lasting about 5 minutes each way. Riders travelled around the lake and past dense trees on their scenic journey. The ride back from the farm offered a slightly different route, looping through the woods behind Loggers Leap. For guests looking to relax or soak in the atmosphere, it was the perfect slow-paced break from the thrill rides. Originally, 2 bright blue and yellow trains served the line, each with a classic American-style cowcatcher and tender. A third train, nearly identical, but marked with a blue front and the number 94, was added in 1994 to improve capacity. These cheerful locomotives became familiar sights chugging through the park, and over the years they gained a nostalgic charm. But everything changed in 2006. That year, Thorpe Farm closed its doors for good. With no destination, the railway could no longer serve its original purpose. The track was rerouted into a closed loop around Canada Creek, bypassing the now defunct farm. Themed elements were added to make up for the loss of scenery, most notably a light-hearted bear hunt, with animal figures scattered along the route. The change kept the ride family-friendly, though the original spirit of travel and exploration was lost. Canada Creek Railway ran in its new form for 2 more years, before the construction of Saw the Ride forced another reroute. The new coaster's towering track supports now loomed overhead as the train wound its way around the altered landscape. After reopening in 2009, the ride continued for just 2 more seasons. By 2011, dwindling rider numbers and shifting park demographics led to its quiet retirement. For the final ride, Thorpe Park brought back the original soundtrack, giving fans a nostalgic farewell. After 22 years of service, Canada Creek Railway had taken its last trip. Its brightly painted trains were moved into storage behind the scenes. One of them later returned in an eerie new role, as a prop for the Platform 15 Fright Nights maze, giving fans a glimpse of the past. In the years that followed, the railway's former route lay dormant, and the station quietly decayed at the edge of an evolving park. Eventually, the area was transformed into the site of Hyperia, Thorpe Park's towering record-breaking roller coaster. Where once families rode past bears and wooded paths, riders now soar through the sky on the park's newest thrill ride. In 1989, Thorpe Park introduced a new themed area, in a departure from its usual style. Nestled along the banks of Abbey Lake, Canada Creek transported visitors to the rugged frontiers of the Canadian wilderness. Timber-framed buildings, rustic theming and a western soundtrack laid the foundation, but the true centrepiece was Loggers Leap, a towering log flume that would soon become an icon of the park. Manufactured by Mack Rides, Loggers Leap was the tallest log flume in the UK at the time of its debut, reaching a height of 53 feet. It marked a decisive step away from Thorpe Park's original educational focus, and into its evolving focus towards thrill rides and more themed experiences. Its theming drew inspiration from Canadian logging towns, featuring wooden barrels, rotary saw props, and a station styled as a rustic sawmill. The ride experience began gentle enough. Guests boarded 5-seat logs, 2 up front, 3 in the back, and drifted slowly from the station. A mine-style tunnel loomed ahead. Inside the darkness, the boat climbed the first lift hill, before plunging down an unseen drop, surprising many riders. Emerging into daylight, the flume wound through trees and across the lake, offering scenic views and occasionally a passing Canada Creek railway train. The true highlight came next. After climbing a second, much taller lift, riders took in a sweeping view of the park, before hurtling down a steep double-drop finale. This second hill delivered unexpected airtime, culminating in a soaking splashdown. Guests often returned to the station drenched and laughing. In 1993, Princess Diana visited Thorpe Park with Princes William and Harry. A now iconic photograph captured the royal family enjoying the log together. After Diana's death, a memorial plaque and logboat were placed in the viewing area overlooking the final drop, in a tribute to the visit. But like many classic attractions, time caught up with Loggers Leap. The tunnel over the first drop was removed in 2013 due to structural issues, and by 2015 the flume was looking increasingly worn. Boats leaked, theming was faded, and maintenance challenges mounted. Though Thorpe Park initially claimed the ride might return, its permanent closure was confirmed in 2019. During Fright Nights later that year, the former station became home to the Creek Freak Massacre scare maze. In 2023, Loggers Leap was demolished. In its place, Thorpe Park began construction of a new icon. Hyperia, the UK's tallest and fastest roller coaster, now rises over what was once Canada Creek. Though its time is over, the wildest ride in the wilderness left a lasting mark on the park and a generation of visitors. In 1996, Thorpe Park unveiled what was promoted as a world first, a roller coaster that would send guests hurtling backwards through complete darkness. It was ambitious and mysterious, with a marketing campaign to match. The new attraction was named X No Way Out. Constructed on the former site of Drive in the Country, the ride was housed in a striking blue and terracotta pyramid, tucked away between Octopus Garden and what would later become Colossus. For a park still catering largely to families, X No Way Out marked a step toward targeting a teen audience. The ride's theme drew from the booming computer culture and the early years of the internet, capturing the fascination of a world hurtling towards the new millennium. Guests were invited to enter the system, becoming trapped inside with no clear escape. The queue experience was designed to disorient. After waiting outside, guests were allowed into the pyramid. Inside, corridors turned black, illuminated only by dim pulsating lights. Robotic voices spoke cryptic commands, echoing through the space as guests wound through a seemingly endless maze of narrow hallways. Near the end of the queue, riders stepped into a simulated lift that appeared to transport riders deep into the digital mainframe. When guests finally reached the platform, a train would already be sitting there, facing forward. There were no visible signs that this was a backward coaster. While marketing heavily emphasised the reverse ride, the actual reveal was kept hidden until dispatch. Once the train rolled out and took a tight curve, riders would suddenly ascend the lift hill backwards, looking down as they climbed. A genuinely disorienting experience, especially with only basic lap bars providing restraint. The ride itself was a chaotic journey through pitch blackness. Despite the Vekoma Enigma layout being relatively tame, the darkness amplified every twist, brake run and sudden drop. Ghostly voices whispered incomprehensible warnings, and random effects, ranging from spritzing mists to a jarring turbo booster noise, kept guests on edge. One particular trick, where the train momentarily stopped and rolled slightly forward before continuing, added to the surreal feel. While critics pointed to unfulfilled potential and a lack of visual theming, X No Way Out was undeniably unique. As the years went on, the ride saw several changes. In the early 2000s, the computer virus theme was quietly dropped in favour of a more generic malfunctioning facility backstory. Effects were added and removed inconsistently, and the queue line continued to wind through dark corridors. In 2013, the ride was renamed simply X, and the backwards trains were turned to face forward. New lighting effects and dance music were added to reposition the ride as a more upbeat experience. In 2018, X was reimagined yet again, this time as Walking Dead the Ride, incorporating scenes, sound effects and theming based on the AMC television series. With this change, the attraction finally embraced full theming, something the original ride had hinted at but never truly delivered. But for those who experienced it in the late 90s and early 2000s, X No Way Out remains a bizarre and memorable part in coaster history. It may not have lived up to its potential, but it dared to try something completely different. Thorpe Park's new attraction for 2005 was one of the most visually striking thrill rides in its history. Towering over the park's skyline, Slammer was the only ride of its kind in Europe, and one of just 2 ever built anywhere in the world. Manufactured by S&S Power, the Sky Swatter was a rare but extreme flat ride. The concept was simple. 2 arms of riders, each seated in rows, were lifted high between 2 towers and spun rapidly through full 360-degree inversions. Riders faced each other as the massive arm rotated like a SWAT, flipping guests head over heels at over 100 feet in the air and speeds of more than 30 miles per hour. From the ground it was a spectacle. In the air, it was intense. Slammer officially opened on March 25, 2005. As the second and final Sky Swatter ever constructed, it was the last hope for a ride model that promised big thrills but quickly proved difficult to maintain. Even in its opening weeks, the ride faced significant issues. The arm locked at the top on its second day of operation, leading to an extended closure, and that was only the beginning. Over the years, Slammer became notorious for its reliability, or lack thereof. Mechanical faults, power issues and aging hardware plagued the ride. In 2006, a levelling failure left riders stuck at a 45-degree angle. In other seasons, Slammer missed months of operation entirely. By 2012, all signage had been removed, and it disappeared from the park map. Yet it refused to give up. In 2014, the ride surprised many by testing again. It reopened the following year, and even ran a full season in 2016, albeit with daily inspections and reduced hours. But time had clearly caught up with the ride. With parts no longer in production and the manufacturer no longer supporting the model, Slammer became increasingly difficult to operate. In April 2017, it closed only a few weeks into the season. By May 4th, Thorpe Park officially confirmed that Slammer would not return. For years, the giant steel structure remained standing, a towering relic that intrigued visitors. Its queue line was reused briefly for Black Mirror Labyrinth, but the ride itself remained untouched. Then, in early 2025, the end finally came. Removal crews began dismantling the ride, with large sections cut down and lifted away by crane. Planning permission to demolish the structure had been submitted months earlier. After nearly a decade of standing but not operating, the last Sky Swatter in the world was no more. When Thorpe Park announced the psychological ghost train, designed by master illusionist Derren Brown, expectations were sky high. This wasn't going to be a traditional scare attraction or simple thrill ride. It was promised as a mind-bending, multi-sensory experience that blurred the lines between illusion, technology and reality. After 3 years in development, and a team of over 1,000 specialists behind it, Derren Brown's Ghost Train finally opened in 2016, as one of the most ambitious attractions ever built in the UK. Set inside a massive disused warehouse at the centre of the park, guests approached the attraction by passing through an imposing sign and entered a themed queue filled with hints at the story to come. After a short pre-show, hosted by Derren Brown via projection, visitors encountered a suspended Victorian train carriage, eerily hanging from chains in mid-air. This surreal visual served as the gateway to an experience that few would forget. The ride system itself was groundbreaking. Guests boarded the suspended train and donned virtual reality headsets. The experience combined physical movement, live actors, 4D effects, and immersive VR, creating a ride where reality felt constantly in flux. One moment you're on a crowded train, the next you're alone. The illusion of isolation, combined with the timed movement of the vehicle and the tactile sensations created by hidden performers, resulted in a terrifyingly convincing environment. Everyone's journey could vary slightly, thanks to alternate VR sequences and randomised effects. And while the experience wasn't always flawless, audio issues and VR glitches were common, the scale of the production was unlike anything else in the UK at the time. Just 1 year later, Thorpe Park responded to mixed feedback by introducing a major update, Rise of the Demon. The updated version featured more intense scares, improved audio, and new VR sequences. The ending also received a major upgrade, with a surprise live scare that caught many guests off guard, offering a more satisfying finale to the experience. Despite these improvements, the attraction struggled with reliability and mixed public reception. Over time, technical challenges and evolving audience expectations prompted the park to remove the virtual reality element altogether. In 2023, the ride was rebranded simply as Ghost Train, now featuring a new narrative, improved live-action sequences, and traditional practical effects without the Derren Brown branding or VR headsets. While the experience was now more reliable and faster to load, some of the ambition and uniqueness of the original had been lost. The illusions and ride systems seen in the original Derren Brown's Ghost Train were among the most impressive ever seen in a UK theme park. A rare combination of magic, theatre and thrill. For over 3 decades, a small but beloved ride sat in the heart of Thorpe Park. It wasn't the tallest, the fastest or the most extreme, but it became a staple for families and younger thrill seekers. This was Rocky Express, a spinning train ride that quietly endured as one of the park's most charming attractions. Manufactured by Mack Rides, the family train ride first opened in 1989 in the children's area of Thorpe Park, a part of the park that would later become Octopus Garden. The ride featured 8 colourful cartoon-style trains, each made up of a locomotive and carriage. Together, they rotated around a central hub, featuring a themed water tower and a Native American figure, a nod to the Canada Creek area, where the ride would eventually find its permanent home. Between the 1996 and 1997 seasons, Rocky Express was relocated to Canada Creek, later rebranded as Old Town. It fit the rustic frontier-style aesthetic of the area, sitting alongside other fan favourites like the Loggers Leap Flume Ride and the once iconic Canada Creek Railway. Despite its appearance as a gentle children's ride, Rocky Express packed a surprising punch. As the train cars rotated around the central axis, the ride climbed and dipped across a subtle undulating track. Reaching speeds of up to 11 rotations per minute, the motion created enough force to push riders to the outer edge of the cars. Each ride lasted around 90 seconds, delivering just enough thrill to satisfy younger guests or offer a break from the park's headline attractions. With a modest height restriction, Rocky Express was one of the few rides that catered to all ages, and with minimal queues, it became a go-to for families. But its days were numbered. In late 2021, Thorpe Park confirmed that the area surrounding Rocky Express would not reopen the following season. The ride stood closed but intact through 2022, as land clearances began for the highly anticipated Project Exodus coaster. By the end of that year, Rocky Express had been dismantled. On January 12, 2023, Thorpe Park officially announced the retirement of the much-loved ride, stating, "It is with a heavy heart we can now confirm the much-loved little trains are retiring from the theme park industry." After 32 years of operation, Rocky Express quietly departed, leaving behind fond memories. Thorpe Park has never stood still. It's a place that's constantly reimagining itself, pushing boundaries, chasing new thrills, and adapting to the tastes of each new generation. But behind every steel coaster and modern ride lies a trail of vanished attractions that helped shape its identity. Whether they were built to educate, entertain, or simply soak riders to the bone, each lost ride and exhibit left a mark, not just on the park, but on the memories of those who experienced them.